We always talk about life being short, but life really is short. And I'm really willing to continue to live a life where I knew it wasn't where I ideally supposed to be, or did I want to just build?
And you flip the script in the book and talk about your personal life is primary. Let's fit everything else around that.
So young people today, they work to live, which is a 180 of what many of us were taught to do.
Think a bit differently about what life could be and maybe should be when we get out of the way of trying to please everyone else. Welcome back to On the Cusp. I'm your host, Dr. Brett Gilbert, and man, am I grateful to have Dr. David Rice as my guest today. This is going to be a lot of fun. David and I got to meet each other finally in person just here at the Chicago Midwinter a few months back. We both had the honor of being on Dr. Gordon Christensen's expert panel and really enjoyed interacting with him. Dr. David Rice, if you're not familiar with him, he's the founder of such an exciting, innovative group called IgniteDDS. We're going to jump into that quite a bit. He's a speaker. He's an author. He wrote this incredible book, Is Everyone Smiling But You? It's a great question, David. We're going to talk a bit about it. I've really enjoyed the book. He's editorial director at Dentistry IQ. He's Pankey, Dawson, and Spear trained. He's an educator. And most importantly, I think, David, the way I see it, you're just a beautiful bridge for young dentists, dental students into life, into dentistry. And as I've learned in the book, you're not just a mentor, but I believe you've somewhat become a mentee of our younger generation in many ways. And that comes through a lot in the book. So Dr. David Rice, welcome to On the Cusp.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Doing great. Yeah, really excited to mix it up a little bit with you and hear more about what you're doing, but to share with our audience. The podcast is really predicated much in the same way that you're doing with your book and IgniteDDS. This isn't about the X's and O's of dentistry. This is about how can a clinician who also happens to be human find fulfillment in this life, and many of our guests are, full-time clinicians. Others are clinicians that have sort of ran for the hills and have started doing other things. And what I'm trying to do in this moment and season of my life is be the bridge between doing other things that light you up, that fulfill you, that are other mountains to climb, but still sitting in the chair and doing dentistry as well. So it's really exciting for me to bring a community together and to learn other people's journeys and what they're doing. And I believe what you have in your book is going to be incredibly impactful because you actually create such a beautiful picture of what is possible when you're willing to just simply go for it, right? And the way that you've done it yourself. So first and foremost, David, before we get going, as we get started here for the session, can you tell us a little bit about what you're feeling grateful for today?
Oh, man, I love that. I am grateful for working from home for a 10-day stretch. This is going to sound so simple to many of you, but I'm grateful for waking up every day and taking a 4-mile walk with Anastasia, my much better half, and our husky Gibbs. So we live on the water, and to be able to get up and go for a walk, and there are dolphin and manatee and stingray. I'm like, it's surreal. So I'm grateful for that simplicity.
Very cool. And, it's always so cool when you read someone's book, which I have and still kind of getting through the end point because it's also a workbook. You've done an amazing job. Again, Is Everyone Smiling But You by Dr. David Rice. But you just said something that is a key element to the book, which is you walk by the water. Because, and if you wouldn't mind, David, just taking us through your journey from Buffalo, New York, right? And kind of being in a situation where maybe there was an event that occurred in your sphere and your periphery of who you were around on a daily basis, which made you realize and think a bit differently about what life could be and maybe should be when we get out of the way of trying to please everyone else. And your desire to be by the water seemed to be a really strong driver for not only your life path at that time, but also the messages in the book. So can you take us just initially through that story of, being in Buffalo and ultimately winding up down in warm Florida?
Sure. So I love Buffalo. First of all, it's a great place for families and awesome food, things like that. But I knew at a really young age that it really wasn't home for me. Like something always just felt off inside. So I would go by Lake Erie, which Buffalo did have, and sit by the water, and it just felt peaceful and freeing, and I had clarity there. And I know all of you who are listening, watching, you've got that place wherever that is. So I would go there, and I get really clear on what I wanted out of life. And the story, sad story, but works out is my then associate became a partner of mine for 26, 7 years, lost his wife at a very young age. And he and I had lots of, I would say, crucial life conversations. And I thought, man, life, we always talk about life being short, but life really is short. And I really willing to continue to live a life where I knew it wasn't where I ideally supposed to be, or did I want to just build the life that I truly wanted? So it was that moment that I thought, this is crazy. I can't do this forever. I have to have a strategy. I have to build the right team around me. And then I got to jump out of the plane and know the parachute's going to open as well. So, I'm not like a blind risk taker. I'm definitely a calculated risk taker, but it started with, to your point, like a bad personal life situation for a very strong friend of mine, and just saying, like, I have to learn from that lesson before I wake up 20, 30 years later and think, where did it go?
Yeah, and it hit me too. When I read it in the book, obviously we all know someone somewhere who's been through some tragedy, but I recently lost my mom too. I think what life and death teaches us is life could be another minute or another 50 years. And the fact that it's the one expenditure that we never know what our balance is creates an opportunity to really be in the present moment. And I think it's clear that captured your attention and realized, why am I living a life that isn't exactly what I want? So I'd love to dive in, because I've always been, as a clinician, intrigued by this concept of essentially a life by your own design.
Mm,
So maybe just kind of taking out all the conditioning and all the expectations that other people have for us, and really truly going inside and figuring out, what is it that I really want. And I believe that is everyone smiling but you is a guidebook to get you there. And I really, again, when I asked you to be a guest, it was because I could sense that your messaging is so much in alignment with mine, which is, let's get the most out of this life while we have it. There's no guarantees. So David, take us through, what does a life by your own design mean to you? And ultimately, because I see you as someone who has actually created that, can you take us through sort of how you get started with this idea of creating a life that you can really live and feel like, this is what I want, this is what fills me up?
sure. So I think, life by your own design, which now at Ignite we call building your self-determined future, means you get to wake up every day and do this work slash fun stuff exactly the way you want. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have a bad moment, right? We all have bad moments, and anybody who tells you like everything's perfect is super Pollyanna and just not true. But the fact of the matter is, like, you literally can wake up every day and love what you're doing, where you're doing it, who you're doing it with, and you can control it, which is amazing. The first shift is like that, you can do it, and I use the word know rather than believe, because I think beliefs can fail us during difficult times. It's easy for us to believe we can do something, then life gets to be a struggle, and then we can believe we can't do it. So you have to just know it, and that for me started with, what I recommend to all of you is, you have a core group of people in your life that you can count on, mentors. Some of them are, there's a chapter in there about, like, some of them are cheerleaders, right? So they help get you, juiced for the day. Some of them are top two percenters. That's a Brendan Burchardism. He's a great person to spend some time with. If for those of you who don't know that name or have heard that name and haven't taken a dive in, Brendan's a sharp guy. And that is, like, you have to learn from the very best of the best. because everybody else just kind of knows how to do what they do, and the nuances get lost and you never get where you want to go. And then, the third person I would say go get right away is someone who sees all your blind spots and looks at the world totally different than you look at the world. And that doesn't mean negative people. It just means people who love you enough to be really truthful to you and poke holes at all the stuff you're looking at. I needed those people. When I first started Ignite, I still remember flying to Fort Worth, Texas, and talking to a really great mentor and friend, Steve Anderson. And had I done it on my own, I would have been in trouble. But because I had a really sharp guy who said, have you ever thought about X, Y, and Z? I'm like, oh, no, I haven't. So, first figure out what that life looks like, or at least what you think it looks like, because you get to evolve and change your mind, which is great. And then go find some really great people who can help have that conversation with you, and then start building a real strategy for that life. That's kind of a initial sequence I would follow if I'm listening to this right now.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think the greatest growth comes with feedback. I'm very lucky. I have my wife, Carrie, is that very honest person that says it like it is. And I think we all need that feedback, growth. It can be painful when it's coming at you, but if you can be vulnerable enough to accept it and learn from it, then it's just beauty on the other side. So, David, you mentioned something in the book which really resonated with me. I was, there were some mornings I like to read in the morning. It's kind of my personal time. And as I've been going through your book over the last few weeks, you say something in there, because what we're going to get into designing your perfect day. And you say something in there to the effect of, in some ways, if you don't feel like you can do that right now, this might feel a little frustrating, right? And you also say, though, that, because we are a profession of responsibility, and sometimes that responsibility feels like a burden. Can you discuss what designing your perfect day looks like, and why, even if it can just be one day, how that can actually change the vibrations of your life and ultimately maybe lead to stacking more of those perfect days? Can you just kind of talk a little bit about that? Because designing your perfect day is a big part of the beginning of your book.
Sure. So I think, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. So I think so many of us think like there has to be this epic shift, and it doesn't. It starts with just one day. So what I would share is sit down and figure out, as a dentist, exactly what kind of dentistry you would love to do in a day. What's it look like? Who's your first patient, your second patient, your third patient? How many patients do you want to have? Who needs to be on your team that's sitting side by side and throughout your building? Who are those people? And then don't be afraid to look to the future, because I think we get hung up as dentists, like, oh, I have the schedule and it's busy for the next 3 weeks as a dentist. Okay. So build your perfect day 3 months from now, 4 months from now. That's fine, but you've got to plan for it. So for me as a dentist, as a clinician, I love big, complete care, highly aesthetic cases. My perfect day was like, I want to see one patient for the bulk of the day. Sure, I'll do some hygiene checks. Then maybe I'll do some follow-ups and some consults, but that was my perfect day. So once we built one day, we could all look at each other as a team and be like, damn, that was a great day. I want more of those days. So when you built the first one, what you actually know, right? Not believe anymore. Like, we can do one day. So how do we build 2 of those days? And so on. And one day you wake up and shockingly, you're like, wow, almost all my days are that day. But it just starts with one.
Very cool. Very cool. And, you talk a lot about the buckets of life, and you sort of have almost retro designed it from kind of our generation. You even said the boomer generation, it was about your work life was primary. You fit everything else around that. And you flip the script in the book and talk about your personal life is primary. Let's fit everything else around that. With that in mind, I'd also love to just sort of break into the IgniteDDS. You mentioned it. You mentioned your mentor, Dr. Anderson, in Fort Worth. you seem to have really tapped into resonating with the younger generation of dentists through your organization. Can you talk a little bit about IgniteDDS and how maybe your association with the younger generation maybe has helped you see this from the personal first?
So young people today, they work to live, which is a 180 of what many of us were taught to do, echoing what you just said. So surrounding myself with literally a generation of people who think about like, listen, I have this job so I could go live my best life. As a 56-year-old, it might be easy for me to look at them and be like, they're spoiled, they're entitled, they want everything today. But I don't know, maybe they know something that we just weren't taught. Maybe their outlook is really intelligent. Truth's probably a little bit in the middle, like it is in life. But when I was around them every day, their expectations for what life could look like were on an accelerated path than mine when I was in school and as a young doc. So I think that, that old adage of you become the 5 people you spend the most time with. I found myself spending time with lots of young people on a regular basis. And just like they were a sponge for my experience, I was a sponge for theirs. I wanted to understand them and how they looked at the world and what was important to them. And the more I just learned and kind of stayed humble and didn't think like, well, I know more than them, I've gone through this already. They taught me a ton. So, I redesigned how I looked at life largely because they looked at life through a lens that I really liked. So I started saying, to your point, like the buckets, like my personal life comes first. How do I build that? My learning comes second. How do I build that? Going to work, that's my last bucket. I just need to make sure I work enough to fill my life bucket and my learning bucket. And other than that, why am I going to kill myself in life to wake up one day and, retire at XYZ age and wonder if I can enjoy it or not?
So beautiful. And what I love about that is I've always been a firm believer that we in life, as we go through, we are mentors and mentees simultaneously,
Yeah.
and sometimes in the same conversation. And that's kind of what I was getting from, your experience is something they can draw on and learn from. And their outlook is something that we can more appreciate the present moment, because I know for a fact we both grew up in an era of you work and you do what your boss tells you, and how you tell me to jump how high, and that's just simply not the attitude of the next generation. And so we can look at it and compare the differences, and I'm sure, as you said, there's merits on both sides, but probably meeting in the middle is the place to go. So tell us a little bit more about IgniteDDS. Is that sort of a middle ground? What, just kind of give the audience a little more understanding of what you've built, because it seems very innovative. And I really admire the fact that you've been able to capture the attention of the younger generation and done so in such a powerful way.
Thank you. So yes, we're at the end of the day, we're a community. Our .com is a little north of 27,000 dentists, largely younger, but certainly have some seasoned pros like us in that mix as well. But the vision of IgniteDDS was really to grow up a generation of people who could do it better than I did. And I think the greatest blessing of it all, and maybe the take home lesson to it, is it's been so successful because every young dentist who's a part of Ignite knows it's their community. I might be the weirdo from Buffalo, New York, who started this whole thing, but it's theirs. They own it. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And my job is to be a guide and help them move from where they presently are to where they want to go, not throw my judgment or my values on them, but to just, guide that process. And, like most things in life, they fall into lanes. So it's not as difficult as people might think it is. We're just a huge community and a movement for better, because, like dentistry's been at a crossroads for a good, probably 12, 13 years. And that's got another few years of it. But, we're either going to the medical model or we're staying is dentists and living in our world. So we wanted to provide a platform for young docs to live in the best world possible, create their own future, no matter which way the rest of the world does it, because there's always going to be room for, top 10 percenters.
Wow, it's really incredible. And I acknowledge what you've built. I'm curious, when it was coming to you to even start this, what was there a moment? Was there an idea that was the impetus for actually creating an online community, calling it Ignite DDS? I'm always so curious because I personally love having an idea and manifesting it into creation. And I love hearing about others' manifestations. So can you tell me a little bit about the origin story?
Sure. So it started with that same event, really. So when Mark lost his wife, I was full time for us dentists is like 4 days. So I taught at Buffalo's dental school. Loved it. I'd been teaching there 11 years, I believe, at the time. And I'm an all in guy, so I'm always the first person in. And I don't lunch is like I'll eat when I eat, and I'm gonna stay till the job is done at the highest level. So imagine like I'm that faculty member. Mark's wife passes. Buffalo's a small town, right? Everybody knows everybody. So the entire, university system, yet alone our dental school, knew what happened. So I walk into my chairman, who was otherwise a really good guy. And I said, listen, I need sabbatical. I want to work an extra day and a half at the office. Mark needs to be able to stay home. I need to be able to pay him to stay home as long as it takes. He just needs to want to wake up tomorrow morning. This is crazy. He's got a 1-week-old baby. This whole thing is nuts. So my chair told me no. So I, of course, took my keys out of my pocket, took my little Buffalo key off, put it on his desk. I'm like, I quit. Some things are more important. If you don't like that, that's on you, not on me. But I always knew I liked being around young people. I liked educating. So I thought, I don't ever want to have my hands tied again like that by anyone. I will build my own community. So, still you give back, right? So I went and I would guest lecture, and, young people, seasoned pros, we come up to the front of the room and we have a conversation, and, two young kids come up. They're like, hey, I want to learn more. I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's go have lunch. So we had lunch for 6 one day. And then I'm like, hey, we should just do dinner. That will not stress you out. School will be over. And we went from 6 to 20 at dinner to, after about 6 or 7 months, we had 300 people I was bringing to dinner. My family was like, you're insane. What are you doing? I'm telling you, there's something here. That's really where it all began, when I knew, like in the beginning, sure, it was like, free food. But a few months in, it was like, whoa, wait a second. I can build a better life than so many more people. And if I start now, I'm going to be in great shape. And then one day we woke up and we had, thousands of people who wanted that too.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So is it a membership based community? Is it a free community? What does that look like for anyone listening that's maybe interested?
Sure. So the base membership is free. Just go to IgniteDDS.com. There's a ton of content on there. And I will tell you, there's a team of us now who are dentists from a year out of school to 30 years out of school, who genuinely want to mentor and help you. The level up from all that is we end up coaching about 35 practices a year, one-on-one, and we deep dive. That is, of course, a paid service, but most of what we do and part of our mission is to give away the store. So you just have to be curious and want it and come and get it.
Love it. Love it. That's great. And something that comes through in reading your book and, creating something like this and making big pivots in life requires support, and I know I'm so grateful. My wife, Carrie, and I, they say if you find a great partner that you really love and have fun with, that's the jackpot of life. And the way you speak of Anastasia throughout this entire book is really inspiring. It's clear that you have a beautiful support system. Can you talk to the younger dentists, or even ones maybe that are, more our age or above? What's the importance of finding a great partner in life, and how has that really enhanced your ability to be who you are today?
Yes, you can only do it alone for a certain length of time before you're just spent as a human. So Anastasia and I as a couple, like we recharge each other's batteries. I would say we complement each other. I'll tell you, danger. It would have been easy for me. My ego would have told me like, oh, I'm out there doing all these things. Like, well, what's Anastasia bringing to the table? But there's no way I do like any of the things that I do without Anastasia doing all the things that she does. It would be impossible to do. So, I mean, I get to hop on a plane and go to a really fun city and work with dentists at a convention or a seminar, or I get to go and spend days with them in their practices only because everything is firing on all cylinders at home when I'm not there. And then I come home and our time is so quality driven that it's amazing, and I'm excited and I'm happy. And if I'm having a crappy day, I've got someone I can share that crappy day with, who becomes, she's one of my mentors for sure. It's easy for us to get lost in our own personal selves. And I'm just telling you guys, if your ego wakes you up in the morning and tells you like you're the show, you got to look in the mirror for more than 30 seconds and just look into your own eyes for a good couple minutes. And I promise you're going to realize like you're not, none of us do this alone. None of us.
It's interesting you bring up the mirror. I think that ultimately, even myself, sometimes it's actually really hard to stare at yourself in the mirror. I think it's really important to do it. And I also find that, sometimes it's important to actually speak to yourself in the mirror and have a conversation with yourself. If you haven't tried it, highly recommend it. They also say, I don't know if you read Mel Robbins' book, Let Them, but she talks about high-fiving yourself in the mirror too. So, hey, give it a go. David, I'm really intrigued by your story only because I think so many of us, we get caught in a repetitive pattern of how we live. And much of that is driven by what we've learned, self-limiting beliefs that we've absorbed. And what I love about the book is sort of taking us through sort of the process of figuring out first, like, what is it that you actually want? And being honest with yourself about that. So can you talk about, in terms of you actually articulating all of these concepts that have been sort of your life model, how did you break it down so specifically in a way of which was clearly an act of service for others? But can you just describe the process of writing this book? I'm not aware. Do you have other books if you've written, or was this your first one? Because just really an amazing, I really want to recommend this. The secret is that David wrote a book that will help you smile like everyone else, hopefully is smiling genuinely.
Interestingly enough, I wrote a book about 12 years ago that I decided not to publish. It was more, I think, of a cathartic book I just needed to write. It was called Sleep on the Couch and Play Golf. So it was the antithesis to Is Everyone Smiling But You. It was before I could look in the mirror at myself for a few minutes and be happy with who was staring back at me. But so the process of writing a book, you can do it a few ways. You can go it on your own and you can self-publish. You can do all these things. But I will tell you what one of the lessons I learned in life is team. And that time is my most valuable resource. So I went to a publisher with a concept and they liked it. So I then interviewed, I'm going to say 9 ghostwriters within that publishing house. And I found like this gem of a human ghostwriter. She was amazing. We just clicked. Like you could feel it. Everybody was talented, but there was just something about her that I'm like, oh man, she's going to be the one. So what we did initially is we spent a full day together and I downloaded like everything that was in my head, and, dentist, right? So I had lots of stuff organized and written out too. So sent her all that stuff. And she learned, I think maybe pretty quickly, like who I was, what was important to me, and the message I really, really wanted to get across, and the style with which I did it. So reading it, Brett, like, it's like, it's super conversational. It's as if we're doing this right now. I never wanted anyone to feel like I'm up here and these are lessons that you can't do. Like, no, that's just life. Like, let's, this is like baking a chocolate cake and all you need are the ingredients in the right order and in the right volumes. So we then met every week for an hour, and it took us, I don't know, 8 months to map out the book. and the chapter titles. And then so she would write a bunch of things and then send it to me. And then I would rewrite it with my own words and say like, oh man, I love what you did here, but could we do this? Like, am I messing? A lot of it was me like, am I messing it up if we do it this way? And thankfully, she was smart enough to say, these are the places where you should do those things, David. And I love you so much, but don't do it here. You know, just trust me on these places. So about 8 months deep, the book was completed. I then sat with a marketing team and I looked at a bunch of different covers and concepts and colors. And you know, right? Colors drive emotion. So there's the purple and the green was chosen for very specific reasons. The texture of that cover, like I fell in love with the texture of the stupid cover. I'm like, oh, this feels good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have this in my hands. And then we set a launch date. So if any of you guys and gals out there want to write a book, like please feel free to reach out. I'll give you all the things to do and what I would consider not to do. We set a launch date. Just so you all know, total transparency. Yes, that book is a 5 times bestseller. That's strategy. Doesn't mean it's the greatest book in the world. I'm proud of it, but it's all strategy. It's just like how we have, 100,000 followers on social media. Like, doesn't mean we have the best content in the world. It just means we're good at strategy. Yeah. And then it launched and, here we are. I think we're north of like 10,000 copies sold or something.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. And FYI, you're never going to make like a lot of money selling a book, people. So if you want to write a book, do it because you want to write a book, and it can become a launching pad or a supportive item to things you're already doing. But I wrote it because I just really wanted to write a book.
I've heard that it's not a moneymaker, but you mentioned strategy, and I believe this is strategy. Like you're
Sure.
giving someone a strategy. One of my favorite things, I love quotes. And so I love under each section, you have different quotes. One that I wanted to read that really came to me because look, is everyone smiling but you? It's a question you could take a lot of different ways. Then you address this that, just because someone's smiling, it doesn't mean that they're happy or fulfilled. So we need to recognize that right away. Is the person that you're looking at in the mirror smiling?
Yeah.
That's the true measure of understanding. But it says that this section is, where do you want to be? You will recognize your own path when you come upon it, because you will suddenly have all the energy and imagination you will ever need, by Jerry Gillies. If that's how you say his name. I think a lot of times we're looking for the path and we just like, how will I know? And we doubt ourselves. But I love that when you're full of energy and imagination, you're going to know you're on the right path. So all these inspirational quotes go throughout the entire book as a supplement to David's writing and ideas. But as we talk about this concept, because you know what I mean, sometimes people hide behind the smile. Dentists smile all day long. It's good for business. But we also know we have an incredible mental health burnout issue in dentistry. I recently interviewed Brett Kessler, the president of the American Dental Association. New studies showing 80% of dentists report being under distress. We've seen multiple suicides in the last calendar year, including recently a dental student. So David, when you look out on the landscape of our generation, I guess I don't know if we're the middle-aged dentists or just the old guys at this point, but whatever, I'm happy where I am. And now you have this perspective of the younger dentists as I do with my community. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing dentists in terms of mental and emotional health at this point?
Okay. So I think at its core, there are 2 states we can live in mentally, right? Our natural state and an adaptive state. And at our core, as to be a great dentist, we are very technically driven. We tend to be task driven. We're highly focused, bad word, but perfectionists. Mm-hmm. And that is our natural state. And unfortunately for us, we work on live humans who need us to be emotional in addition to that. So if you're one of most dentists out there and you have a very analytical natural state, you're exhausted at the end of every single day. You are exhausted. And if you're a people person and you're not so analytical, you're probably also exhausted because you don't like focusing on all the details but our job requires that all day long. So I think that is the most pressing issue in dentistry that no one talks about. And then the other thing that makes it really difficult is listen, since what we learned in COVID is people had options, and a lot of them walked. So we have a shortage of hygiene members, a shortage of dental assistance members, which, oh, by the way, is going to get worse. In the next 3 years, we're going to lose 1/3 of the dental assistants. They're just going to age out. So we have this inherent stress. We have now team stress, throw in for some of you, like the insurance reimbursement stress. And that trifecta has put dentistry in a position where we are no longer a recession-proof profession. It's not a thing anymore. So I think a lot of us know that, but the question is how many people are actually doing something about that, or versus putting their head in the sand. So those three things are the biggest, but I think the largest is simply that internal struggle we face every single day.
Yeah, I agree. And where I really think your book also is super helpful is, I know for me personally, like a lot of my frustration through my life until I kind of hit a really powerful state of burnout and had to figure out how to come back from it, was this feeling of being trapped. We alluded to, you take on this profession when you're very young, as you're, dealing with dental students and et cetera, but then you continue to evolve as a human and realize you have a lot of other interests. What I love about your perspective here is, I think if we can put our personal interests in front of everything else, if we can recognize that being a dentist doesn't mean that that's the only thing you can do, right? Yeah. You can create a community, you can write a book, you can, start a club, you learn a new skill. And that's really what I'm trying to bring forth with the podcast, is this concept that whatever actually uniquely lights you up, we all have our own talents, we all have our own things that excite us. Whatever those things are, and they might be completely different than your partner in the practice or your friends, do more of that. Because I believe that part of the difficulty of being a dentist is, like you said, we're sucked in so deeply down the rabbit hole day in and day out, whether it's making people feel comfortable, accepting the fear that they have, the technical quality. I've tried to replace perfectionism with excellence in my life. You can always be excellent in your effort, how hard you try, what you bring to the table, but being perfect is almost impossible. So, yes. So what I'm trying to say here is, I think IgniteDDS, I think your book, I think what you're representing in your own story is, hey, we don't have to necessarily leave the profession, but man, we can do a whole lot more to light ourselves up just by simply being honest with who you are. And that's what I believe your book really takes you through, and super grateful for it. As we're sort of winding down here, David, I wanted to ask, in terms of living a self-determined future, and you said this on stage in the panel, and this was really piqued my interest when you said it. When you are talking with a young dentist, an old dentist, someone who's feeling a little despondent, maybe just feeling like, either they're young and they're like, how did I get myself into this? Or they're older and they're like, how do I get myself out of this? Can you say like one tangible step that would be like something you could do today that would be a step toward living a self-determined future?
You all have somebody that you really trust. The simplest thing to do is I would pick up the phone, call that person, and just talk out loud about where you are. And sometimes we're so good at convincing ourselves that we can power through something, that just getting, someone who really cares about you's honest opinion, and then maybe pick up the phone and call someone you don't know at all who's highly successful at anything that you think you might want to do. And I think good people will always answer that call, and just ask if you can pick their brain. What you're going to find is nobody has all the answers, number one. Everybody's struggled and will continue to struggle. That's the human path. And you'll learn a lot how to take that first step. But at the end of it, you're just going to have to go for it and take it. And do it. It can be a side hustle, right? It doesn't have, like, Ignite for me was a side hustle for 4 years. I still did dentistry. It was a side hustle. And then one day I was able to flip the switch and say, Ignite's what I do. And hey, dentistry is like this really cool hobby that I get to do part-time, and it's a blast. And all those things will happen. Work on your concept, pick up the phone, call somebody or somebody's, and just start talking out loud. Bring it to life.
That's fantastic advice. Sounds like you did that in Fort Worth. So there's something to be said about being vulnerable enough to actually speak what's on your mind, what's in your heart, what you truly want, because there's power in our words and the universe is listening. I find it truly inspiring that you've been able to make this pivot, where dentistry becomes something you can do for art, for love. And then you have something else that you created that serves other people. That's your primary. I mean, David, just huge high five, man. That is just awesome.
Thank you.
That is just so inspiring. And for anyone that's out there, there's options. I think that's the key, is getting honest with yourself. And maybe the best way to do that, to David's advice, is to speak about it with others. Speak it out loud. Do it proudly, and then be willing to accept the feedback, because it's that feedback is what you're actually asking for, even if it hurts at first. The more it hurts, probably the more you needed it. So as we wind down, David, so can you tell us a little bit about, we'll have the book linked up in the show notes as well, but how can the doctors reach you? How do you get involved with IgniteDDS, and any other offers or things you have going on that you're excited about that you'd like to share?
Sure. So, you can reach me a number of ways. My email is my name. It's david.rice@ignitedds.com. Feel welcome. I'm on every social platform as IgniteDDS. So feel free to DM, whatever's easier for you. I'm happy to chat anytime, so we can set up a time that works for both of us. You can talk out loud, and I can be a sounding board. The things I'm most excited about is really what we do on the coaching side. It's so cool. We're doubling people's practices in less than a year. It's crazy. And
Wow.
it's not that we're bad people. It's just that we weren't taught so many things. And, very thankfully early on in my career, I learned I need to go outside of dentistry. I need to learn a lot of lessons that dental school didn't teach us. My post-grad program didn't teach me. So we learned a lot of those lessons. And then just like Ignite's team on the young person side, we built a core team of people who are all top 2%ers. So I love helping dentists do that, because what I know is our ticket to the self-determined future happens in the four walls of your practice. That's where it starts. And if that means you want to keep doing that, but differently, amazing. That means you want to get out, then let's maximize the value of your practice before you get out, because what you're being told is very much a half truth, and you need to go into all these things eyes wide open.
Wow. Amazing. Dr. David Rice, I'm so grateful for you accepting my invitation to join us. This has been amazing. Highly recommend the book. Is Everyone Smiling But You? I think it's clear that you can be the one smiling. It's just making the decision to put yourself first, not in a selfish way, in a way in which you can be the best version of yourself, which will contribute so much more to the world, because we all have unique genius. We all have unique traits. But when we maximize and feel great about who we are, not only do we help others, but we can inspire them to be the best version, just like David's doing. So, my man, thank you. I wish you a beautiful weekend. Thank you for your time. We'll have all the links, everything posted in the show notes. And just can't thank you enough for being a part of On the Cusp.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.